hit record, and we'll get started. So good morning. My name is Heather Leeson. I'm with Solferino Academy at IFRC. Welcome to Data and Digital Week at IFRC. We started off with just 1 day and 1 hour of data days at the Secretariat in the Red Cross in Geneva. And now we've moved up to a 5-day full event. So we are very excited to have you join us from around the world. And if you are joining, please do put the name of your national society in the chat and say hello. Today, we're very excited to have our guests from the Netherlands Red Cross and from Twilio.org. I'll be introducing them quite shortly. I just want to tell you what the title of the event is so that you're aware about what we're going to be talking about today. And that is connecting the Red Cross and Red Crescent volunteers and people affected to using cloud communications. All right, so what does that mean? With that, we're going to really kind of focus on two of our guests. First, we have Michal Kowalik, who is the director and head of Twilio.org, EMEA Global and Emerging Markets. And then as well, we have Martin van der Veen, who is the strategic lead at 510, which is an initiative of the Netherlands Red Cross. And welcome both of you to our first show of the day. And we're very happy to have all of you join us. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Martin van der Veen to share a story around how the Netherlands Red Cross in 510 has been focused on connecting via multi-channel communications. Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Heather. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, and great to see all familiar and new people in the room. If we can start the presentation. So I'm leading 510. It's a data and digital team in the Netherlands Red Cross, and we've been working with several national society during the COVID outbreak on supporting data and digital work to make the COVID response more cost effective, faster, and also of higher quality. And I want to share one particular story about the Netherlands Red Cross work in the Caribbean, specifically on the islands of Sint Maarten, Aruba, and Curaçao, where we have where the population of the island currently or already always heavily relying on tourism has been, of course, extremely impacted by the COVID outbreak. And currently 20 to 30% of the population depends on humanitarian support from our branches on the island. If we can move to the next slide, please. So currently the islands, the branches on the islands, they are performing one of the biggest cash programs actually in the Red Cross movement. And they are supporting the society with food and hygiene, mainly through digital cash programming. And the branches are currently supporting this program hugely by using digital technology. But before they were really not. So they are within the course of a couple of months, they had to transform themselves to be to go from about 20 and sometimes 200 people per week that they're helping to about 20 to 30% of the population, which is about 350,000 people, the whole population of the islands. So it's a 3,500% increase that they were trying to meet. Next slide, please. So let me just quickly walk you through an experience of what is happening, how are people engaging with the Red Cross at the moment. And so the people of the island, they actually self-register at the moment into the support of the Red Cross. So they self-apply, they use standard tools. So in our case, they use a COBO form and they submit their request for support to one of the branches. And then the branch reviews this data to see if people meet the eligibility criteria. There's different criteria that they match around with the data that people provide. And they also check preferred modality of people. So if they want to have ready to eat meals, if they want to have food parcels, or if they prefer e-vouchers. The potential beneficiaries, they then receive a phone call or a Skype call in which the data is checked and validated. And then also their inclusion or exclusion into the program is explained. And once they're admitted, then their data is transferred into a CRM, so a beneficiary registration system. And from there, all the aid, delivery, and the communication to these people is initiated. The only paper that is still being used is the distribution list that sometimes need a signature from the beneficiary confirming that they've received aid. And one critical component that I want to highlight in this story is the communication. If we can go to the next slide. So one of the challenges for a very small branch on an island, and this is really sometimes a group of about 40, 50 volunteers, sometimes 100 to 150 volunteers, support with a number of staff, is of course the huge amount of people approaching the branch. And if all these people need to travel to the branch office and then communicate directly person in person, and these huge numbers of people that have to be spoken to in real life is really unfeasible and also unsafe in the COVID outbreak. So we decided to use communication technology to do this communication with the people on the islands. First, we tried to set up, or the branches were using the mobile phone. So they bought a couple of SIM cards, they plugged it into a phone, and they were trying to sort of keep track of all the messages by using SMS and WhatsApp on a regular phone, but it was really unfeasible. So that's when we started to engage with the Twilio team to see how we could use cloud communications and really move from a few messages per day into thousands to tens of thousands of messages every day that we could send to the people on the islands. So within 6 months, we were able to send WhatsApp or text messages to 150,000 in total. And we really had to understand also how we can get this message across to people and how they react to those messages. So the first attempt that we did was sending by SMS. So we used the Twilio platform to send SMS to everyone. And the response was really, really low until we realized that SMS channels are usually also contain a lot of spam messages from other providers and people were really not reading them anymore. So we did a survey among the group of beneficiaries, and we found out that both language choice, being able to give their preferred language, but also to give their preferred channel was really key. So for every person, we now give in one of 4 languages, in one of 3 channels, we give them directly the information. And these messages, they contain information about voucher uploads or leftover balance, selection criteria, but also when there is fake news on the island, it's being addressed through these channels. And when we are now doing evaluations with the beneficiaries, we really get an extremely high response. And this is also what we have for another program that we're doing in the Netherlands with undocumented migrants. We also see like almost up to 50% of response on the surveys, which is quite unique for the Red Cross. Next slide, please. So a couple of lessons that are not really technology lessons, but changing in the midst of a crisis completely your approach to how you deliver aid. It requires a few things. So, and these are actually quotes from people on the islands. So be persistent. If you want to change a strategy during a crisis, it really takes time. And also, if you want to succeed in a really large program, you need to think scale from the beginning. And that is also why you need to pick and select your approach and your technologies to be able to scale without also increasing your requirement for staff and human resources to meet that scale. And therefore, it's also essential that you are willing to take a little bit of a step back to allow you to move much further. And then for digital transformation in general, for our branch, it's been really essential to involve youth. young people, they are really much more familiar with technology. And there were quotes from the team saying, people really didn't want to use a laptop to deliver the aid, and the director just put the laptop on the table and was really persistent, sitting side by side, helping them to understand what needs to be done. And in the end, getting all the volunteers and staff working with these digital tools. One key message is also where my last message for this short presentation is that I really feel, and my team is supporting many national societies around the world, also with their challenges with communication and using cloud communication. They really need to be prepared. It's quite challenging in many contexts to allow large-scale communication through digital channels if you are not prepared. And prepared really means knowing the channels you want to communicate through, register yourself with the cloud communication provider and get acquainted with the technology. But also really essential is make sure you have access to one or multiple local numbers that then also connect to these platforms that you want to use. If you want to use SMS, you need to have a local number registered, preferably. If you want to use WhatsApp, you need to also register accounts, you need to get approval, your templates need to get approved. So it's a lot of prep work, and it will really hinder you if you want to implement this in the midst of a crisis. And in the Caribbean, we were able to move really fast using Dutch phone numbers. For instance, in Malawi, the team is already trying 9 months to connect one of their local toll-free numbers into such platforms. So it's quite essential to prepare also for large-scale communication, and then when you have it, can be a really powerful tool. So I'll end with that. Thank you very much. Handing it back to you, Heather. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Martin. You know, humanitarians and citizens alike prepare, and they run simulations about how to leave your house, how to survive earthquakes. These are normal presentations or things that people prepare for. And Martin's point around information as aid and the digital preparedness is just as critical as the physical preparedness, if not more. Last year I was part of a simulation with the Turkish Red Crescent where we were simulating all the different processes for digital technologies for a project. And I think those kind of desktop practices of planning out and testing and getting familiar with it is important. So with that, I think, thanks Martin for the story around how to reach people. As I said, information is aid. So now we'd like to turn to our special guest, Michal Kowalik. He's the director and head of Twilio.org. EMEA and Global Emerging Markets. We're very happy to have Michal here. He helped us on our digital strategy, him and his team. And we've invited some special partners to our IFRC Digital and Data Week, people who've been along the digital transformation journey with us. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Michal. Please go ahead and thank you.
Thank you, Heather. It's before I start, I just want to say it's a pleasure and honor to be on a call with you guys today. It's the Red Cross is one of those organizations. Red Cross and Red Crescent is one of those organizations that we as a Twilio.org are very passionate to work with, and I cannot be thankful enough for all the work that Martin has put into the technical advocacy of the communication platforms at Red Cross. So whoever was on top of beyond Martin, whoever was involved, thank you, and I'm very happy to show you what we do. But let me start with introduction first, who we are and why I'm even on this call. So George, if you wouldn't mind firing off the first slide, that would be just grand. And George, I didn't tell you before, but there's a bit of a build in the on that slide. So yeah, very good. So I'm Michal Kowalik. I run the Twilio.org in EMEA, and I also very recently have been asked to lead all the efforts beyond North America, which is great because that's exactly where we see the largest need for humanitarian aid, for communications being used for development of societies. And the one thing I want to share with you, it's our main goal. George, if you wouldn't mind going for the next slide. Yep. we need, okay, fantastic. What the Twilio, Twilio.org is the organization that has been built, has been created when Twilio, the commercial company, has entered New York Stock Exchange back 2016. And at the time, the founders and the CXO team said, okay, we need to do something good for the world. At the time, they have put 1% of the IPO of the listing on a New York Stock Exchange trade, and we have this 1% of cash or stocks that we can put behind our main goal. And our main goal, and the only goal really, is helping 1 billion people by 2025. That's why we believe that working with the likes of Red Cross Red Crescent is the easiest way for us to do some good for the communications. And today I want to show you a couple of things we did in 2020. Since Martin has mentioned what was done with Red Cross Netherlands and Antilles, I'm going to talk about a little different organizations. Yeah. So the first one, I would like to show you what we did in Libya. And if you wouldn't, George, if you wouldn't mind playing the video for me, that would be just fantastic. It's a 1.5 minutes video, right? So please.
We love videos.
Yeah, they tell the story. Yeah.
اتصلت فيهم بردوا علي بجاوبني على حسب سؤالي في الخدمات. يعني تمام كويسين. أي لاجئ يتصل فيها بدوها معلومة وبيجاوبهم على حسب سؤالهم، يعني ما عملتم كويس.
Find that it's a way for them to access services they might not know how to access, and also especially during a pandemic it's a much safer way for them to be able to connect to UNHCR, and also NRC, you can connect them to other services as well.
بيجاوبوا على الرقم حتى لو ما رفعوا لك في الوقت بيعودوا لكم في نفس اليوم. مركز الاتصال يساعد اللاجئ وقدموا له خدمه، وانصح بانه الناس يعني تتصل بالرقم.
Thank you, George. So this is one of the technologies that Twilio and Twilio.org provide. You can imagine that in places like Libya, the telecommunication, and we can stay on this slide or the next slide, George, it's fine, before we move anywhere further. Thank you. You can imagine that in the places like Libya, like Ecuador, like Colombia, or Myanmar, the access to the telecommunication and building even the simplest contact centers where refugees, migrants, or any people that need help, it's pretty challenging. Together with NRC, Norwegian Refugee Council, we managed to create insane, apologies for that word, but insane workaround system where actually we're able to help 7,500 refugees looking for the help with the usually legal advice. We have a very similar center built in Colombia for Venezuelan refugees. And also we had one built for Myanmar. However, these days communications in Myanmar are a little challenged, so we're waiting for the communications to go back up. So with a very simple solution, but built within days, we had an impact versus, you can imagine how long would it take to negotiate with the local telco or build old type of the contact centers all they do is report it directly to their headquarters almost overnight. It's something that you can observe the traffic right away. So you're not only providing the high value and the high help for the people in need, but also what happens is that you, as well as your donors, as well as your headquarters, sees exactly what you're doing. So all the paperwork, all the guessing, all the using the private mobile phones, all of that goes away. So this is something what we did because we knew it's a mass communication needed for those people. If we move 2 slides forward to the second use case, George, that would be Save the Children. Yep, next one. That's the video we already seen. Yep, no problem. No, that's Trek Magic Malawi. I'm sorry. That's the one. Yet another use case. Maybe not use case. One of the projects we did 2 years ago, and it has been recognized by the World Bank as a innovative and pretty brave pretty brave deployment. In Malawi, one of our customers called Trek Magics have been asked to deploy basic ambulance service. There was nothing like that before. The death rate of the people being involved in car accidents were way above the averages in the emerging markets. And with the Twilio technology and with some smart ways of connecting local telcos and the cloud communication platforms like Twilio, they're basically able to run the ambulance dispatch platform. This look all great in the theory. You can imagine in emerging countries, the setup and making it work takes time. It takes time. It takes a lot of patience and it takes a lot of testing. Martin has mentioned 10 minutes ago that it takes 9 months to get a proper connectivity in emerging markets. Sometimes those projects are really, really long. Currently, we're working in Sudan with Norwegian Refugee Council to get a connectivity with Sudanese MTN. And it's 6th month to do it. And today I received an email that it works. But it took us 6 months to do a really simple voice connectivity in Malawi for mass communication. Another project I would like to mention to you, and George, if you wouldn't mind forwarding, thank you. We're moving from voice and we're moving from the crisis response or disaster response, like in the past 2 examples. Here's more about pandemic, and here's more about the COVID. I'm going to talk more about this in general in a few seconds, but we've been seeing that there are 2 problems out there. That's what our non-for-profit partners, customers were telling us. The first problem is basically get vaccines to people, but before you get vaccines to people, you need to get people to vaccines. We've been told by several partners in Africa, in LATAM, in APAC, that very often the perception on the ground is that it's yet another disease we need to deal, and it's some people from Western Europe are telling us that we need to do something. So what we've been asked to help, and this is just one example of Save the Children. We were talking with a few others, and we have a few other projects, is how can we get to the target audience, in this case, young people, with the right channel, meaning WhatsApp, right? Calling them wouldn't work, but how do we use WhatsApp? How do we utilize that to create the advocacy program to actually make them think about being careful with COVID, especially in a place like Indonesia, where we're on the crowded side of society. So that chatbot you're looking at here, it's actually the screenshots from my mobile phone from Friday. And they by providing, they call it the check, the assessment, but basically it's a game. It's something that you get involved in, and you start thinking, am I behaving the right way? Am I responding to what's going on in the world or in Indonesia in the right way? That will help those people to propagate it within their friends, within their family circle. And what this is lots of funny pictures, but it's very involving. I played with it for a few good moments, and I'll send you later the number you can play as well. It's open to anyone. And what is what is very also interesting that it remembers the technology behind it, the automation behind it, remembers if you interacted with it or not within the past 24 hours. And I'm getting constant reminders, Michal, come back to our assessment because you probably are not safe. So with this, you're keeping the main issues on top of mind of young people. Yeah. So this is roughly what we did and what we're doing in Indonesia, and we're trying to scale it across 100 countries because we do believe that helping people across the world to move on with the COVID-19 and get to the next chapter is very important. What I want to explain now to you, you've seen all those all three projects. I would like to tell you very quickly what is Twilio. Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind progressing. Yeah. You've seen, we call it channel APIs. These are the channels you get to people. You've seen voice in the case of Libya. You've seen the voice in the case of Malawi. In Indonesia and also in Antilles, you had the WhatsApp. But we have a much more other channels to get to the people depending on their country and where they are. Yeah. If you would, George, if you could click like 4 or 5 times. Yeah. Yeah. One more. And one more. That's it. Thank you. Oh, one back. What happens here is we're also providing tons of automation behind it. It's not on a channel, only channels. There's lots of tools that can build on, and that's what Martin is using in Antilles. So very happy to go and explain it later in more detail. And because we are able to get to this amount of tool set, and the last slide, if you don't mind, it's the second last slide, we're able to build. Yep, George, the next one yep, thank you. We're able to build the vaccination delivery systems. This is the second part of getting vaccines to people. That means that we're able to look to optimize logistics, public information, registration, appointment coordination, and the follow-up if there's any adverse reaction. And if I can go to the last slide in here, is that we've been working with the several Red Crosses so far. I know there are several Red Cross and the Red Crescent organization using us without contacting us yet. But I'll be very glad and very happy to basically help and answer any questions you might guys have and to see how can we help in your work and optimizing what you do. Over to you, Heather.
Thanks very much, Michal. I'm always very moved about technology that fits into people's day. Often we're asking people to fit into technology's day. And I think with WhatsApp, I think it's been really prevalent in terms of our communities within the Red Cross Red Crescent. Security issues aside, I know people sometimes want to work on Wire or Signal or Telegram or whatever it is. But I do have to say with WhatsApp, we have with the CBHA, which is one of the largest health programs across the Red Cross Red Crescent, thousands of people connect around the world to be able to share health best practices. And these are kind of the trainers. And so there's all kinds of ways that people are connecting, whether we're talking about connecting with affected communities or we're connecting with each other. We certainly have to try new ways to do that. And so very much my thanks to Michal and to Martin to share these stories with people about how they've used this one particular platform. We know that SMS is, that mobile first is certainly a priority across the world. And when I say the world, the majority world. You heard that example from Martin about desktops. Really mobile first is something that I think all of our programs need to encourage and include. Now we have some time for questions. So I want to make sure that we open up the question box. So for those of you that joined a little bit late, thank you so much for joining. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little button. You'll see a button that says mute, and then a button all the way over that says chat. If you'd like to speak, please do raise your hand or put your name in the chat and we'll certainly come back to you. I guess my first question is really for Martin while we're waiting for other people to ask questions. Martin, how hard is it to scale up to do this kind of program? Like how many hours does it take? What is the financial bit about it? And thinking through it in terms of training and stuff, if you could let us know just a little bit about like, how'd you get there? Because I think as people plan and doing their planning across the different national societies are here, it's always good to know what are the kind of first steps that they need to do. And again, we welcome a lot of questions from everybody in the chat, and please just let us know. Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. Yeah, so in terms of resourcing, what we did on the 3 islands, there was not really like an information manager or a person with the technology background. So the first thing we had to do as part of the response teams was send one of our team in on to each of the islands. So there were 3 people coming from the Netherlands Red Cross into the branches to help the teams do let's say, transform the processes and move into this digital way of working. And all islands still have 1 year later, because the program is still running, they still have this role. So that's quite essential. And we notice it in all our programs, especially if you want to get this thing done remotely, you need 1 person at minimum, like that is doing the advocacy and the legwork, but also really a bit of the technology part. And then in this particular case, we have done remotely the support for setting up. And like Michal said, because we use the Twilio technology, which is, you can really make it very basic implementation. So we started with a very basic implementation, which took me, so I did it myself. It took me two evenings to set up the first message flows, where about 10,000 people got the message 3 days later. After that, we have integrated the messaging in the CRM system. It took a bit more time. One of our team on the island has done this, but in general, we have been running this with like between 2 and 3 people that were doing the full tech support for 3 islands. So it's not massive, especially not compared to all the people that you need for the implementation of programs and running the offices. Mm-hmm. And doing the field visits and the legwork. Yeah. In terms of cost, it's also compared to the huge volume of the program, it's really marginal.
Okay.
And so on the messaging side, there is fixed costs, but let's say always HR costs are going to be a manifold of what you would need to budget for the messaging per se.
And are you cross-training, just one follow-up question, Martin, are you cross-training people so that they can learn how to be self-sustaining on this? I think that's really important in terms of digital.
Yeah, so what we always try to do is to rotate people through. So we've rotated people from the headquarters into the branches and then back. So actually the people that were deployed into the islands for the information management support, they were volunteers. So we mobilized volunteers, we sent them to the island, and then when they returned, they became staff of the Netherlands Red Cross, and now they are delivering the cash IM support globally. Mm-hmm. So we try to keep these people within the loop of the national society so that you can really learn and build. Mm-hmm. And also on 2 of the islands, there's local staff now being recruited and volunteers being trained. So there's this is part of the sustainability. Yeah. And at the moment, the program is actually being handed over to the local government. So then that's where there's capacity building of the local partners as well.
Yeah, and that's really important as an auxiliary of the Red Cross, as an auxiliary of many governments. Questions from people in the group that are here today, questions for Michal or for Martin, you're more than welcome. If you want to put your hand up or come off mute, please don't be shy. This is really our conversation as a joint to learn about how we can connect with our folks here. Questions? So Michal, I have questions. I can interview all day, I promise you. So Michal, for you, when it comes to working with the Red Cross Red Crescent, I know you've worked with Martin. You said that you might have worked with other groups as well. Tell us how as a partner, how do we make sure that we meet you halfway? Because I think sometimes digital technology and transformation is very hard. So what if we were information officers, like some of the folks that are in the chat here, what are some of the ways that they can get organized to be able to be a good partner with Twilio? Because digital transformation is also about not just learning the tech, but how do we build a good partnership over?
I would like to take an example of how we work with Martin. Martin took and the team in Netherlands, it took some time to learn how Twilio works, and it's on the technical side. And sometimes I have a feeling that Martin knows more about Twilio than some of my engineers, which is fantastic. Thank you very much. basically sitting on a call and having a discovery conversation, and it's absolutely non-binding, and just we sit together and say, okay, here's a problem we have as a Red Cross. How would you solve it with technology? And for an hour or a couple of shorter meetings, we go through, okay, how can we approach that? Who's the target audience? Who are the main channels? What's the problem we're trying to solve? What's the scaling problem that you guys have? Why can't you do it using your mobile phones? And let's draft what is possible, together. And if that works, if we know that this is technically possible and operationally possible, then we start thinking, okay, who's going to deploy it? Who are going to be that headquarter resources or 5-10 resources and local resources? And what's the best way to approach it? It needs to be very pragmatic approach. We've learned I joined Twilio in January last year, and what I learned is in these type of projects, what really counts is agreeing on a simplicity in the very beginning, versus having a huge program covering everything and being no, it doesn't work. But if you distill idea to something very simple, like financial support for Dutch Antilles, and we need a WhatsApp to talk to them, that's solid. That's small but very solid. How do we help refugees in Libya? That's very solid. The moment you agree on this, it's way easier to move forward. Sometimes we can't move forward because there's not possible. We're working with Martin right now on the one country in the Middle East where the telecommunication is so challenged that we're still haven't found the right way to get there. Yeah, we're testing different ways, and that might happen. But it's, in order to be a good partners from both sides, it's being a pragmatic, meaning just sitting at the table and then drawing, drawing and sketching. What would it look like? What is also important is to remember that those things evolve. Our initial contact center in Libya, and I was involved technically in writing the code in there because we were trying to learn how are we going to call internationally Libya and how going to avoid the cost for the refugees you've seen. We thought that calling these people right away back, because you want to minimize the cost for them. So basically what it is that they call the number, the one you've seen on the video, and the call drops, and there's a callback from the UNHCR or Red Cross or IFRC. And we said, those people need help right away. Yeah, let's call them right away. Wrong. After a month and a half, we realized they need a call the same day. And we promised them we're going to call them the same day, the same time. So guess what? They were calling several times. So we had a one person calling, asking for a callback 10 times. We thought it's an urgency. No, for them it was, we want to be on top of a pile. So you have a first project that we think it works well. After 6 weeks, you look like you talk to the couple of people and it's like, how about us not calling right away? We're going to call you once at some point today, and we're not going to call you, and we're going to send you a text message after you call us twice. That there's no point. You're under our wing. Yeah, you're fine. Just we need a bit of a patience, and it's amazing how much you learn. So it's drafting what you think it needs to be done, and having a patience to improve it with some iterations.
Yeah, I like the fact that you've had, I think any technology implementations always about human behavior, cultural differences.
Exactly.
Like you really have to understand what the needs are and also be flexible for that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm super, and I'm, if I can add to this, I was super, it was great to hear that Martin has a 50% of response rate in his region. This is great because, look, if you create the call center or any type of assessment, any type of surveying, any type of contact with the people in need, they will tell you anything just to get help.
Yeah.
So the moment you ask people for opinion, for being helped, for giving their feedback on something, there's so much filtering that needs to happen. And building this close relationship with your beneficiaries is important, because if you just do the survey, we did one survey in July, we got nearly 100% in emerging markets were fine with COVID. They're okay. What the heck are they going to tell? Yeah, they don't know who's calling them. Maybe it's a government. Maybe there's, you know, so building this brand of the trusted humanitarian entity is very important.
Yeah, I think community engagement and accountability is a large program within the Red Cross, and it really is about a two-way feedback loop, and really thinking through that, and also understanding how to build that trust with communities, which is why I'm so proud of the Red Cross Red Crescent, because we're in 192 communities. We do have a couple of comments in the chat. I have from Anwar from Bangladesh. Anwar, if you want to come off of mute, you can talk. But well, I'm just going to give him a second to talk. And for those of you that are in the chat who are here, who are not speaking, I would love to know if SMS is part of your programs and is mobile part of your programs, if you're doing it now or you're planning to, or, you know, just what brought you here today. So just quick statements about what brought you here today. And Anwar, are you there? Anwar, would you like to speak? Here, because it's in the chat, I'm just going to read it for him. In developing countries and underdeveloping countries do not have good technical knowledge as well as the interest of use of technology. Did you face such difficulties, and what would be your suggestion to overcome it? I'm going to flip that to Martin. Okay, so how do we deal with kind of like the digital literacy and the digital divide within our network and within our organizations for that matter? Martin?
Yeah, so this is really a key question, of course. It's like if there is nobody in the national society that goes through the processes that the national society is doing and the ways it's delivering aid and looking with the technology lens at what can improve, then it's really difficult to start your journey. So there's a couple of approaches. Like the lightweight approach is to try to get someone on board through the humanitarian programs and just get started. And that's how many national societies are doing. They're getting an information manager in or a data focal point in, and they're starting to build and test and do small improvement iterations. The other approach is a bit more fundamental and also part of the digital transformation strategy of the IFRC. There is this digital maturity framework that is like an assessment and a roadmap format to help the national society to get a clear path forward of how to invest into its own digital transformation. That process would really require leadership buy-in, otherwise it will not initiate. And so if the leadership buy-in is not there, then the pragmatic route can help you get started. But if you want to fundamentally change this way that your national society looks at data and digital, then the digital maturity approach is one to look at.
Wonderful. So Michal, you talked to my colleague George about the future of technologies and what people need to prepare for. So this is a very now conversation. Of course, we need to plan. If you're running a program in Somalia, or where was it? I can't remember, Libya. It takes a long time to be able to get access, Malawi, a long time to build out your technology program and build that trust and the network around the community. What guidance would you have for people as they plan for 1 year, 2 years? We're in COVID times, obviously. We've seen a ramp up of people using digital tools. We're running this digital data week, which really just started with 2 or 3 sessions, and we said, hey, let's just invite everybody and see what they come, and we got over 2,000 people registered. So we know that if you build something, people are going to join in and kind of co-create together. But what should we plan for 1 year, 2 years from now? What should people be planning? Because we really have a lot of early adopters here, knowing the names, and my quiet introverts who've been joining the call. Tell me, what should they be prepared for? What should they be learning to come up to next? Besides Twilio, of course, but I mean, just in the general ecosystem.
Yeah. So before I start, I just want to say technology is the least of your problem. Yeah, technology is like connecting two cables. Maybe not literally, but connecting two cables. It's in some countries it takes a little longer, but in the end, it's going to work. Where there are two main obstacles that you have to just plan for. Yeah? That this is the fact of life. One of them, it's the people resistance in your beneficiary resistance, and I'm going to talk about this in a second a little more, and also regulatory and compliance. There are some countries in the world unless you are Red Cross Red Crescent, and you guys are in very, very not privileged, but very good place, because you have such a brand and such a mass and such a trust. It's more trust than a brand, that you're doing the good things. But there are some countries still, and they're supposedly they're democratic countries. They won't operate. They won't allow widespread of technology because of regulatory problems. Yeah? And I'll skip the names, but there are few usual suspects. But when it comes to people, your beneficiaries, I've seen Sergio has asked about there was Sergio, or now I forgot who asked it, but
Anwar.
Anwar, yeah,
yeah.
Anwar, yeah. Is you have to understand who your audience is. Yeah, you build a system a little differently in Lebanon, where everyone uses WhatsApp, either over text message, or over text, or voice recording, and it's prevalent. There's a group of people who need voice. Yeah, I get it, but it's completely different if you do it in Mozambique, where the access to the technology is different, the access to the to their technology, to the physical hardware is different. You have to plan for that. So you're not talking to them in a channel that they're not familiar with, or you're not talking in a way they're not familiar with. Sometimes you should not even send a text message. We're working with the one UN agency that we decided to do some surveying over the voice, because Amharic, which is very hard to write down language, and it's very long, and it's a high level of illiteracy in the target groups that we're working in. So like, okay, the voice will be the most obvious. And when you build that, what you should do, what we've seen, and I'll give you, for example, the example of Norwegian Refugee Council in Colombia, Venezuela, and Ecuador. There's like a triangle of the countries that use our contact center. You build consistency in the project. Yeah? Apart from staffing, what Martin has said about the data management, about someone who builds that, about the program manager in the country, for the beneficiaries, you need to build a trust. Yeah? You're already starting in a good position, being Red Cross Red Crescent. This is great, but when you build a service, start small. Start understand how people interact. You're going to fail some of the times. I think it's very important. You need to understand that you're going to build something which is not going to be used. Don't give up. Think again. Talk to people who are not using it. Add a little bit. Use it for 6-8 weeks. See how it works, and keep expanding. So people in a year will understand that this number, or that WhatsApp channel, or that those SMSs which come in, actually this is a trusted. That's Red Cross. I'm going to use it. So it takes time, it takes an effort. If anyone tells you, like with everything else, that we have this fantastic humanitarian platform, it's going to solve all your problems tomorrow and everybody's going to be happy, no, it doesn't work that way. It didn't for me yet, but it just takes time and efforts.
Yeah, and I think
failure.
Yeah, no, and I think we need the freedom with digital transformation to be able to pilot and to go beyond piloting. I think there's always that tension between, we've done a lot of pilots, it's pilotitis. How do we get to scale, right? And I think this is something that that we're all really thinking about. And I think your point around regulatory and compliance is well noted. And it's also about culture and communities, right? Every community has a different kind of level of trust and engagement too. So just really being part of that community is important. One thing I've learned in my experience working around digital and data over the last few years is that my understanding of digital technologies and data is useless if I don't meet people halfway. Right? It doesn't matter, because if we don't speak and seek to understand that middle way and help to inspire, then we'll never be able to try new technologies to be able to reach people. And frankly, what I've seen since 2010 is that people are using mobile programs before anything else. Having worked at Ushahidi and other tech companies, like, it's very clear to me that people are willing to try anything to be able to communicate with their online digital communities. So we have just a little bit more time and a time for questions. And I know we have some really quiet people on the call here, and I'm really thankful that you could be joining and here, but we really love to hear from you. I think that Julio is here from the French Red Cross, and I think they've been using Twilio. I'd love to hear from you, Julio, if you'd like to speak up. And then our friend from ICRC or Japan Red Cross, really happy to have you all here. So if you do have a question or comment, we'd be happy to hear from you. You can just come off and mute. Who's got their hand raised? Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, in the meantime, I just want to add a little bit on the previous discussion of how to also get started, what Anwar said. So together with the Twilio team, we have been working on a few technical manuals that describe how you can get started using voice or SMS or WhatsApp in a very basic way. And so this is because the humanitarian case is sometimes a little bit different, I guess, from the business case. So we're trying to do the write-up of this step by step, so that any national society that wants to give it a go, they have something that has been tried and tested before in another context, and they can have a lower barrier of playing around.
Yeah, I think with any technology, it's good to test on yourself too and your team. I actually like testing technology. I like to see and find bugs. Unfortunately, an internal project, I found 3 bugs in my first test of it. So unfortunately, sometimes that's not welcome. But we certainly want to make sure that we test all the processes and really understand with local communities. One of my favorite mobile projects that happened in Nigeria, one of my colleagues, he wanted to teach people mobile data collection. And what he did was he wanted to find out who could cross-train the communities. And so what he did was first, he asked to start with the conversation around data protection because he wanted to talk about trust before technology. So he asked people to talk about how they felt about using their phone, how they felt about who they contacted. And he started with those basic questions. Then he went to the technology. And so by talking about trust first and then going to technology, I really find that that's a really good way to go forward. And of course, we always want to know how people work and what fits into their day. And I think that it's really hard to figure out what that program design can be because there's no one way to do it. And so one platform to rule the world, that's certainly not the case. We have multiple guests throughout the week who are working with different digital technologies to try and help engage folks. So with that, I just want to check if there's any other comments from people who are participating. Otherwise, I will turn to Martin and Michal just with some closing comments from themselves. I didn't warn you guys, sorry guys, but just a closing summary or any kind of feedback you'd like to give or final statements. Any other questions from folks on the call? Early in the morning, late in the afternoon? Carlos, early in the morning?
So I think I've read an article months back that, because I'm a Catholic, and the Pope recently just backed up to digital technologies, Microsoft and I think IBM, for basically he said that these two companies when they engage with digital technologies, they're ethical, and it builds up some sort of trust with the people. So much so that some companies in developing countries exclusively use Microsoft for their businesses. So I'm thinking, did Twilio engage in something like that, engage in trust building exercises with different religious sectors in the countries that they're in? Because partnerships like that, even just vocally through the news, builds trust on the data, and that those data are protected because their leader says so.
Carlos, I'm really excited you brought that up. I think ethical companies and companies that respect, especially with our fundamental principles as the Red Cross Red Crescent, is absolutely core. They have to be close in values. So whether they're recognized by a religious body or they're recognized by local governments or they're recognized by the trusted networks, I think that's always a valid thing. Maybe just to Michal, have you, like, I know that you've been building alliances with governments and just different bodies out there in civil society. Maybe you could just speak to that, and then I'm going to go to Ian's comment.
Yeah, I think it's very important. I'm probably talking to Vatican would be on the harder side, but when it comes to the local trust, Carlos is spot on. In some of the countries, and I'll give you an example what we're working on right now in if the leader of the village or a community does not tell everyone that this is okay, or be honest, or doesn't direct people in the right directions around the COVID advocacy, they will not come back to you because they don't trust you. So more on the trust and the leadership connection in the very small community of 50, 150 people, it's equally important, because you are being blessed or recommended by someone who is the wise guy. I mean, wise guy is the wrong word. The wise person in the community. Yeah. So Carlos, you're spot on. It's you have to start. Opportunity to do this, you should, because that increases your chance of technology or anything being used effectively and openly. Because otherwise, you're going to get 100% yes, I'm okay with this. Yeah.
I had the opportunity to work with a small group in Tanzania, and they really worked with community leaders from all the different religious groups. And I think that was really important. It was regarding open mapping, and I think that's key. Ian, did you want to tell us about the session this afternoon? Ian, go ahead. You're on mute, my friend. Still on mute. You're still on mute. I will pretend to be Ian because Ian's got some problem with his voice there. This afternoon, there's going to be a demo and interactive session on using Twilio and chatbots at 1300 CEST, which is 1 p.m. CEST. They'll be joined again by Twilio, but also the Kazakhstan Red Cross and Netherlands Red Cross to share their experiences. So really excited to have some hands-on work there. And with that, I think what I'd like to do is just thanks so much, and bye from Hirataka from Japan. Thank you for joining us so late in your day. Just some closing sentences. Maybe we'll start with Martin and then Michal. Closing thoughts, reflections.
Yeah, I think for just an additional remark that was said on ethical behavior, I think when using technology as a Red Cross network, you really should look at not just your data protection, but also your data responsibility, which also takes into account these ethical considerations, right? So when partnering with the tech sector, they should be really upfront also in the decision of who to partner with and who not to partner with, but also in the implementation of your program. There's still many ways you can make ethical considerations that make it in the end safer for people affected.
Wonderful. Thanks, Martin. I think responsibility means going through the whole program, not just about protection, but really that upkeep to make sure that everyone knows and understands and is in line with making sure that it's responsible. Michal, tell us, last closing comments from you.
The technical, the communication in humanitarian aid, in the development, and also in healthcare, what we're going probably to face more and more given the pandemic. We need to prepare for the next one. It's all about starting small and a consistency, not giving up by just failing that it's something doesn't work. It takes time, and I want to assure that we're here to help, and whenever we can help you to make your work more scalable, more efficient, and cheaper probably, because in the end you don't have to fuel up the gas to your Jeep to go somewhere. You need to use the technology in a wise way. We're here to help, so looking forward.
Wonderful. Thanks, Michal, for joining us, and Martin.
It's a pleasure.
Now we have a tradition at Solferino Academy that we ask everyone to come off video and wave goodbye. So I know you've been all on video doing multitasking, but please say goodbye to everybody and your guests. And thank you for your questions and comments, and have a really wonderful Data and Digital Week. I hope you go and support all those beautiful national societies having sessions, and the 2,000 or so people that have been registered. Okay, thanks again, Michal and Martin. And I'm just gonna end the recording.